I had everything I ever wanted. A beautiful fiancée named Amanda, a successful career as an architect, and what I thought was a supportive family. My younger brother Jason always seemed to want what I had, but I never imagined he would cross that line. Then one rainy afternoon, I walked in on them together in my own bed. The betrayal was devastating, but my mother Margaret's reaction cut even deeper. Before I share how my entire family fell apart and how I finally stood up for myself after years of manipulation, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If my story resonates with you, please subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family betrayal. For the past 6 years, I had been working at one of the most prestigious architectural firms in Boston. I had climbed the ranks, quickly earning the respect of my colleagues and securing a comfortable financial future. My life was on track, exactly where I had always dreamed it would be. I met Amanda at my college roommate's wedding 3 years ago. She was a bridesmaid, standing across from me during the ceremony. Our eyes kept meeting, and by the time the reception started, we were inseparable. Amanda worked as a kindergarten teacher, and her gentle nature and patience captivated me immediately. She had this way of lighting up any room she entered, always ready, with a kind word or a thoughtful gesture. Our romance progressed quickly. Within 6 months, we were living together in the house I had purchased the year before. We talked about our dreams almost every night, planning our future together, discussing how many children we wanted and where we might travel. Everything seemed perfect. Last December, I proposed at La Maison, her favorite French restaurant. I had arranged for the waiter to bring the ring with dessert hidden beneath a silver dome. When she lifted it and saw the diamonds sparkling against the chocolate soufflé, her eyes filled with tears. Everyone in the restaurant applauded as I got down on one knee. That night, we called all our family and friends to share the news. We immediately began planning our wedding for the following summer. Amanda spent weekends visiting venues and florists, while I worked extra hours to make sure we could afford everything she wanted. Our wedding binder grew thicker each week, filled with color swatches, catering menus, and seating arrangements. Throughout most of my life, I had maintained a close relationship with both my parents. My father, Richard, had always been my biggest supporter. He taught me to fish, helped me build my first model buildings, and encouraged me to pursue architecture, despite my mother suggesting more lucrative careers like medicine or law. Everything changed when my father died suddenly from a heart attack just over a year ago. He collapsed while mowing the lawn on a hot July afternoon. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. His death left a gaping hole in our family, one that would never truly heal. What I did not realize at the time was how dramatically it would alter the dynamics between the remaining members of our family. With my father gone, my mother Margaret became the undisputed head of the family, and the subtle favoritism she had always shown toward Jason became much more pronounced. Growing up with Jason, who was 4 years younger than me, had always been challenging. From the beginning, there was something about our relationship that never felt quite right. While most siblings have their rivalries and disagreements, ours seemed to run deeper. Jason had this uncanny ability to charm people. He could walk into a room and immediately become the center of attention with his quick wit and easy smile. Our mother Margaret absolutely adored him, making little attempt to hide her preference. When we were children, she would rush to his defense whenever we argued, regardless of who was at fault. My father tried to balance this by spending extra time with me, but it was clear that in our mother's eyes, Jason could do no wrong. As we grew older, I noticed a disturbing pattern. Whatever I had Jason wanted, my toys would mysteriously disappear, only to turn up in his room. The baseball trophies I won ended up broken. The girl I took to junior prom suddenly started dating Jason the following semester. It was as if he could not stand to see me happy with anything that was mine. Despite all this, I tried to maintain a relationship with my brother. After college, I kept my distance, building my career and life away from his influence. But when our father died, everything shifted. Jason had just lost his job as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company, supposedly due to budget cuts, though he would never give me the full details. With nowhere else to go, he moved back in with our mother. I visited them regularly, bringing groceries and helping around the house. I even pulled some strings to get Jason interviews at several companies. Against my better judgment, I lent him money when he claimed to be short on rent for an apartment he never seemed to find. When Amanda and I announced our engagement, Jason seemed genuinely happy for us. He offered to help with wedding preparations and even volunteered to handle some of the vendor negotiations, claiming his sales background would get us better deals. Amanda, always seeing the best in people, encouraged me to let him help, suggesting it might strengthen our brotherly bond. I wanted to believe he had changed. I wanted to believe that at 32 years old, I could finally have a normal relationship with my brother, especially with my wedding approaching. I thought perhaps my father's death had given him perspective, made him realize the importance of family. In retrospect, I was blinding myself to the truth. The signs were all there, but I chose to ignore them. The day everything fell apart was a Thursday in early April. I was supposed to be in Chicago until Saturday for a client meeting, but we wrapped up early. Deciding to surprise Amanda, I caught an afternoon flight back to Boston. A thunderstorm had just rolled in as my taxi pulled up to our house. Rain pounded against the windshield so loudly that I almost missed the notification on my phone, a text from Amanda saying she was having dinner with her coworkers and would be home late. I found this odd, since she usually told me about these gatherings in advance, but I dismissed my concern. As I paid the driver and grabbed my suitcase, lightning flashed across the sky. I dashed to the front door, fumbling with my keys as rain soaked through my suit jacket. Once inside, I called out to announce my early return, but no one answered. I assumed the house was empty. Then I heard it, a sound from upstairs that did not belong in an empty house. At first, I thought it might be the television left on, but as I climbed the stairs, the sounds became unmistakable. Someone was in our bedroom. My heart raced as I pushed open the door. Time seemed to stop as my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. There in our bed, the bed I shared with Amanda, were my brother and my fiancée. For one surreal moment, nobody moved. Then Amanda screamed, clutching the sheet to her chest, her eyes wide with shock and something else, guilt. Jason, however, looked almost calm, as if he had been caught stealing a cookie rather than destroying his brother's life. What followed was chaos. Amanda burst into tears, repeating that she was sorry over and over while Jason slowly got dressed, avoiding eye contact. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to speak or move. Finally, I found my voice. "How long?" I asked, surprised at how steady I sounded when my entire world was collapsing. Amanda could not answer through her sobs, but Jason spoke up. "A few months," he said with a casualness that made my blood boil. "Since around Christmas." Christmas? When I was working late to pay for our wedding, when I was planning our future, they had been betraying me for months. As if this revelation was not devastating enough, Amanda finally composed herself enough to deliver the final blow. "Barnett, there is something else you need to know," she said, her voice trembling. "I am pregnant. About 10 weeks along." The room spun around me. 10 weeks meant the child had been conceived in February Valentine's Day weekend, when I had gone to visit my sick uncle in Florida. The timing confirmed what I already knew: the baby was Jason's. I did not yell or break things as they perhaps expected. Instead, I felt an eerie calm descend over me as I told them both to be gone by morning. I grabbed a change of clothes, my laptop, and walked out into the pouring rain. I checked into a hotel downtown, unable to face returning to the house that night. For hours, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall, my mind replaying every moment of the past few months, searching for signs I had missed. Sleep eluded me as a torrent of emotions washed over me in waves. One moment I felt crushing sadness, the next blinding rage, then a hollow numbness. By morning my eyes were red and swollen, but no tears would come anymore. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. 23 text messages from Amanda begged for forgiveness, claiming the affair had been a terrible mistake, that she still loved me. Jason had texted too, but his messages lacked any real remorse. "We need to talk about this like adults," one read, as if I was the one being unreasonable. I ignored them all. I called my office and requested a week of personal leave, something I had never done before. My boss, hearing the strain in my voice, approved it immediately. For 3 days, I barely left my hotel room. I ordered room service but could not eat. I turned on the television but could not focus on any program. It was as if I had stepped outside my body and was watching someone else's life fall apart. On the third morning, I finally called my mother, desperate for some support and guidance. Her reaction stunned me. "Oh, Barnett," Margaret said with a sigh. "I was wondering when you would call." Her tone was not warm or sympathetic, but oddly distant. When I started to explain what had happened, she interrupted me. "I already know all about it," she said. "Jason and Amanda have been staying with me. We need to have a family meeting to discuss this situation rationally. Come to the house tomorrow at noon." Before I could respond, she hung up. I sat there holding my silent phone, wondering why she had not asked how I was feeling or offered any words of comfort. A knot of anxiety formed in my stomach as I realized this family meeting was not going to go the way I expected. The next day, I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, a colonial-style house in the suburbs where I had grown up. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I gathered the courage to go inside. Margaret answered the door with a stiff smile. "Everyone is waiting in the living room," she said, turning without embracing me. The living room looked exactly as it always had, with family photos covering the walls and the same floral patterned couch my father had complained about for years. But the scene before me was surreal. Jason and Amanda sat close together on the couch while an empty armchair waited for me. As I sat down, I noticed how comfortable they seemed together, as if they had been a couple for years rather than illicit lovers. Amanda had the decency to look ashamed, her eyes red from crying, but Jason kept his arm draped possessively around her shoulders. "Thank you for coming, Barnett," my mother began formally, as if she were chairing a business meeting. "We need to discuss the situation and come to an arrangement that works for everyone." I waited for her to acknowledge my pain, to express disappointment in Jason and Amanda's betrayal. Instead, what came next left me speechless. "I understand you are upset," Margaret continued, "but we need to be practical. This happened in part because you have been neglecting Amanda with all your late nights at work. Jason tells me you were often gone for days at a time." My mouth fell open. "Are you seriously blaming me for them sleeping together?" I asked incredulously. My mother pursed her lips. "I am simply stating facts. Amanda has needs that were not being met. And now there is a child to consider." It gradually became clear that my mother had not only known about the affair for weeks, but had been actively supporting it. She spoke of how Jason and Amanda had developed real feelings for each other, as if that somehow justified their actions. Then came the demand that would forever change my relationship with my family. "Jason is currently unemployed and in no position to provide financially for Amanda and the baby," Margaret stated firmly. "As you are established in your career and were planning to support Amanda anyway, it makes sense for you to contribute significantly to the child's upbringing." I stared at her in disbelief. "Let me get this straight. You want me to financially support my brother's child with my fiancée?" "It is the right thing to do, Barnett," she replied, her voice taking on the moralistic tone she had used throughout my childhood whenever I questioned her. "Decisions. Family takes care of family." Amanda leaned forward, tears streaming down her face. "I still love you, Barnett," she said in a voice that once would have melted my heart. "We can work through this. I made a terrible mistake." The calculated nature of this ambush became clear. They had planned every word, every tear, expecting me to capitulate, as I always had in family conflicts. For a moment, I nearly fell into the familiar pattern of seeking peace at any cost. Instead, I stood up. "I need time to think," I said quietly, and walked out, ignoring my mother's protests and Amanda's renewed sobs. In the days that followed, the pressure mounted from all sides. My mother called daily, alternating between guilt trips about family responsibility and thinly veiled threats about how my refusal would affect my relationship with the only family I had left. Amanda's parents, who had always treated me like a son, now called to express their disappointment in how I was handling the situation. Somehow they had been fed a version of events where I was the villain who had abandoned their pregnant daughter in her time of need. Even mutual friends began taking sides. Some offered genuine support, but others questioned why I could not be the bigger person and make it work for the sake of the child. Every morning I woke to new text messages from my mother, reminding me of my obligations and suggesting I meet with Amanda to discuss reconciliation. Every evening, I came home to find more of Amanda's belongings, gone from our house, a slow evacuation that served as a constant reminder of her betrayal. Oddly, she had left the engagement ring on the dresser, as if leaving the door open for a reconciliation that I could not fathom. My work began to suffer. Designs that once flowed effortlessly now stalled as I stared blankly at my computer screen for hours. My boss, initially sympathetic, began expressing concern about missed deadlines. The career I had built so carefully was now at risk, along with everything else in my life. Jason's messages grew more taunting over time. "Amanda has been telling me how much better things are between us," one read. Another boasted about how excited he was to become a father, as if he had not stolen this future from me. There were moments when I considered giving in writing a check, just to make it all stop. The constant pressure was wearing me down, eroding my sense of self and what I deserved. Maybe this was my fault somehow. Maybe I should support them financially, if only to keep what little family I had left. Then came the day that changed everything. 3 weeks after discovering the affair, I decided to visit my maternal grandmother, hoping for a neutral perspective from the wisest person in our family. At 85, Grandma Rose had always been a voice of reason and compassion. I arrived at her small bungalow, unannounced, letting myself in with the spare key she kept under a flower pot. The television in the living room was on, but Rose was not there. I called out softly, not wanting to startle her. As I moved toward the kitchen, I heard voices coming from the sunroom at the back of the house. I recognized them immediately: Jason, Amanda, and my mother. I froze, not wanting to confront them again, especially not in my grandmother's home. But then I heard my name and curiosity got the better of me. I moved closer to the partially open door and listened. "Barnett has always been easy to manipulate," Jason was saying with a laugh. "Remember when we were kids, and I convinced him that Dad had given me permission to use his baseball card collection? He believed me even when half the cards went missing." Amanda giggled a sound that once made my heart leap, but now turned my stomach. "It was almost too easy to get him to believe I was working late all those nights," she said. "I just had to send one sad text about missing him, and he would tell me to have fun with my friends. The best part is how he thinks the baby might bring us back together." Jason continued, "As if I would ever let that happen now that I have got her." My mother's voice joined in. "Once we get him to agree to the financial support, we can work on getting the house too. He will move out eventually, especially if you two start bringing the baby around. That house would be perfect for a growing family." Their laughter mingled together as they continued plotting how to extract the maximum benefit from my pain. My grandmother was nowhere to be heard, likely napping in her bedroom, unaware of the conspiracy taking place in her home. I backed away silently, my hands shaking with a combination of rage and heartbreak. This was not a momentary lapse or a passion that could not be controlled. This was calculated, coordinated betrayal by the people I had trusted most. I made it to my car before the full impact hit me. Tears burned my eyes as I gripped the steering wheel, my breath coming in gasps. For weeks, I had been wondering what I had done wrong, how I had failed Amanda where I had gone wrong with Jason. Now, I knew the answer: nothing. I had done nothing wrong except trust people who did not deserve it. Without conscious thought, I found myself driving to the cemetery where my father was buried. The spring afternoon was cool and clear, birds singing in the trees surrounding the peaceful grounds. I knelt beside his simple headstone, wishing more than ever that he was still alive to guide me. "I do not know what to do, Dad," I whispered, touching the cold granite. "I feel so alone." "He would have been furious about all this," a voice said behind me. I turned to find Thomas, my father's best friend since high school, standing a few feet away with a bouquet of flowers. He placed them on the grave and put a hand on my shoulder. "I come every month," he explained. "Your dad and I had a standing golf game for 30 years. Hard habit to break." We stood in silence for a moment before Thomas suggested coffee at the small cafe across from the cemetery. I agreed, desperate for any connection to my father and the unconditional love he had shown me. Over steaming cups, I found myself telling Thomas everything: the affair, the pregnancy, my mother's betrayal, and the conversation I had overheard. He listened without interruption, his weathered face growing increasingly troubled. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "Your father worried about this, you know. Not this specific situation, but the dynamic in your family. Margaret always favored Jason, even when your father tried to balance things out." "Dad never said anything," I replied. "He did not want to put you in the middle. But he confided in me about how Margaret would undermine his relationship with you, how she would make excuses for Jason's behavior while holding you to impossible standards." Thomas leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Your father stayed in that marriage partly because he feared what would happen to you if he left. He wanted to be there to protect you from becoming the family scapegoat." As we talked more, Thomas revealed patterns I had never fully recognized. How my mother had isolated my father from his friends, how she had manipulated family conflicts to always position herself as the victim, how she had subtly encouraged competition between Jason and me instead of brotherhood. "You have a choice now, Barnett," Thomas said, as we parted. "You can keep trying to win approval from people who will never give it, or you can break the cycle and build a life based on mutual respect." That night, I slept peacefully for the first time since discovering the affair. I had clarity at last, and with it came the strength to act. The next morning, I called a family lawyer recommended by a colleague. During our consultation, I learned several important things. First, I had no legal obligation to support a child that was not mine, regardless of my previous relationship with the mother. Second, the house was solely in my name, and Amanda had no claim to it without marriage. Third, I could legally request Amanda to vacate the property with proper notice. Armed with this knowledge, I began gathering evidence of the affair's timeline and the manipulation that followed. I recovered text messages between Amanda and me that proved she had been lying about her whereabouts for months. I found credit card statements showing purchases Jason had made using my card without permission, establishing a pattern of financial exploitation. Most damning of all, I had the security camera footage from our home system. I had installed it after a break-in at a neighbor's house last year, but had never thought to check it until now. The footage clearly showed Jason entering our home, using a key I had not given him on multiple occasions when I was away. At work, I spoke honestly with my boss about the situation. Instead of judgment, I found support. Several colleagues came forward with observations about how dedicated I had been to Amanda, working overtime to provide the wedding she wanted, always leaving events early to get home to her. Their perspectives reinforced what I now knew: I had been a devoted partner to someone who did not value that devotion. With evidence in hand and my confidence returning, I was ready for the final confrontation. I texted my mother, Jason, and Amanda, requesting a meeting at my house the following evening. "I have made my decision about financial arrangements," I wrote, knowing this would ensure their attendance. The pieces were in place. For once, I would be the one in control of the narrative. They arrived together exactly as I had expected. My mother led the way, walking into my home with the entitled air of someone who believed victory was already hers. Jason followed, his arm around Amanda's waist, her pregnancy now just beginning to show. I had prepared the living room carefully. 3 chairs faced my position at the desk, where my laptop was open, connected to the television screen on the wall. A folder of documents sat before me. "Thank you for coming." I began formally, echoing my mother's business-like tone from our previous meeting. "I have given considerable thought to the situation and have come to several decisions about how we will proceed." Margaret smiled clearly, believing I was about to capitulate. "I knew you would do the right thing, Barnett," she said. "Family always comes first." Yes, I agreed, real family does. The emphasis I placed on real caused her smile to falter slightly. Before she could respond, I turned to the screen and played the first recording, the conversation I had overheard at my grandmother's house. The color drained from their faces as their own voices filled the room, exposing their conspiracy in their own words. When it ended, I calmly opened the folder. "I have here documented evidence of the following: the timeline of your affair, Jason's unauthorized use of my credit cards, Amanda's lies about her whereabouts, and proof that Jason used a key to enter our home without permission on at least 15 occasions. I looked each of them in the eye. I also have statements from friends and colleagues attesting to my commitment to our relationship, Amanda, in contrast to the story you have been spreading. Jason attempted to interrupt, but I held up my hand. You will listen now as I have listened to your lies for weeks. I laid out my terms clearly. Amanda would move out completely within 7 days. Neither she nor Jason would contact me directly again. All communication would go through my lawyer. I would not provide financial support for the child, nor would I attend family events where they would be present. But he is your brother, my mother protested, her voice rising. And that child will be your blood relation. Blood does not make family. I responded, my voice steady. Respect, honesty, and love make family. None of you have shown me any of those things. As the reality of the situation sank, in their reactions revealed their true characters. Jason became angry, threatening lawsuits he could not afford, and damage to my reputation. Amanda cycled through tears, seduction, and finally bitter accusations. My mother attempted to reassert control, invoking my father's name and claiming he would be ashamed of me. That was her mistake. Dad would have stood by me, I said quietly. Thomas told me how you manipulated him too, how you undermined his relationship with me, how he stayed to protect me from exactly what you are doing now. Margaret's face went white at the mention of Thomas. For the first time in my life, I saw her speechless. I stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. I will not be manipulated or gaslighted any longer. You have a choice now. Accept these terms or lose me completely. Either way, I am done being the family scapegoat. As they left, Jason was the last to go, pausing at the door. For a brief moment, I thought I saw genuine regret in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the mask he had worn all his life. This is not over, he said. I looked at my younger brother, feeling a strange mix of pity and relief. Yes, Jason, for me it is. The following week, I hired movers to pack Amanda's remaining belongings while I stayed at a hotel. My lawyer delivered a formal notice of no contact to all three of them, making it clear that any attempt to pressure me would result in legal action. I put the house on the market, unwilling to live, surrounded by memories of betrayal. It sold quickly in the hot Boston real estate market, and with the proceeds I accepted a position at an architectural firm in Seattle, 3,000 miles away from the toxic family dynamics that had defined my life for too long. The first months were difficult. Despite knowing I had made the right decision, loneliness sometimes overwhelmed me. I would find myself reaching for my phone to call my mother or text Amanda, forgetting for a moment all that had happened. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma and betrayal. Our weekly sessions helped me understand the patterns that had shaped my relationships. I learned about scapegoating in family systems, how certain members are designated to bear the blame for family dysfunction. I recognized how I had been conditioned to doubt my own perceptions and accept responsibility for others' actions. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life. I reconnected with college friends who had moved to the West Coast. I joined an indoor rock climbing gym and a book club, forcing myself to socialize even when it felt uncomfortable. Gradually, I built a new support network based on mutual interests and respect rather than obligation. My work flourished in the new environment. Without the constant drama and emotional manipulation, I rediscovered my passion for architecture. 6 months after arriving in Seattle, I was assigned to lead a major project designing an eco-friendly community center. A year after leaving Boston, I felt ready to consider dating again. I proceeded cautiously, transparent about my past, but determined not to let it dictate my future. I went on several pleasant but unremarkable dates before meeting Laura at a charity auction for the homeless shelter where she volunteered. Unlike Amanda, Laura was straightforward and independent. She respected my boundaries and shared her own. Our relationship developed slowly, built on honest communication and genuine care for each other's well-being. Through mutual friends, I occasionally heard news about my former family. Amanda had given birth to a boy, and DNA testing had confirmed Jason as the father. My mother had sold her house to help them with a down payment on a small condo. Jason still struggled to maintain steady employment, and their relationship was reportedly strained by financial pressures. Sometimes I felt a twinge of sadness for the nephew I would never know, but I recognized that maintaining distance was necessary for my own health and sanity. Breaking toxic cycles sometimes means making painful choices. 2 years after that rainy afternoon that changed everything, my life bore little resemblance to what I had planned. Yet in many ways it was richer and more authentic. I had learned to value myself enough to demand respect from others. I had discovered that family can be chosen built on trust, rather than merely shared DNA. When Laura and I moved in together last month, we celebrated with a small gathering of friends who had supported me through the darkest period of my life. As I looked around at the genuine warmth and connection in the room, I realized something profound. I had not lost family. I had found my true one. The cycle of manipulation and scapegoating that had defined generations of my biological family had ended with me. Whatever family Laura and I might create in the future would be built on a foundation of mutual respect, honesty, and unconditional love. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to distance yourself from toxic family members? How did you rebuild your life afterward? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about breaking free from manipulation and creating healthier relationships. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult but important experiences. Remember, sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the one you were born into.